Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Welcome to Evolutionary Talks with EV Mechanica. Today we have with us Mr. Sunil Kapoor, CEO Epsilon, and Vice President Mr. Kalpesh Pandya. And thank you for taking out time for us, sir. So,
Thank you for having us. Appreciate it.
can you tell us a little about the company?
So the company, overall parent company is Epsilon Carbon Private Limited. We started in 2010-11 time frame. This company, the Epsilon Carbon is primarily into the coal tar business. Coal tar pitch business and also specialty carbon. And in 2018, we decided to forward integrate the pitch business to create a precursor for active anode graphite material. So 2018, we started working on it, and then we developed a precursor material, which is good for making an active anode material. We were supplying that active anode material precursor outside India because there was no manufacturing in India. And then in 2020, we decided to further forward integrate it to make active anode material, active anode graphite material in India. So where we stand today is we decided to make the anode material become global business. So setting up plants in India, which will start with a 30,000 ton capacity, will scale up to 100,000 tons. And then we are setting up a facility in US and North Carolina, which will start with 30,000 tons, will scale up to 60,000 tons. And similarly in Finland, we are starting with 30,000 tons, and which is for our European customer base, and go to 60,000 tons. Then in fast forward, earlier this year, we acquired the facility from Johnson Matthey. So I think Kalpesh can speak about it.
Yeah, so Sunil explained to you about the anode business. On the cathode side, Epsilon acquired the Johnson Matthey Battery Center in Germany. They have an R&D center, a pilot production, and a cell testing center, all within one. So we acquired that facility. They have a process; it's a patented process. We have about 150 patents. The main products are going to be cathode materials, but mostly specifically LFP and LMFP. These two. So the cathode demand in India is, by 2030 is projected to be about anywhere between 300 and 500 kilotons. But it'll be mostly for LFP and LMFP. These chemistries are most suited for the Indian market, as opposed to NMC, which is mostly on the European and the US market. So in that sense, Epsilon is well positioned to take this technology from the German center, scale it up in India. By 2026, we plan to have a 10,000 ton capacity plant in India. And then, we have plans to add more capacity to up to 100,000 tons by 2030.
Okay, sir.
We will be deciding the commercialization strategy on the cathode and hopefully follow a similar global footprint, but we want to start from India.
Okay, sir. So, what would you say is the core focus of Epsilon's business operations?
So core focus is to produce battery materials,
Okay.
and then we are creating an ecosystem overall as a company, not part of Epsilon Advanced Material, but we have a recycling business for batteries. We also have a power EV charger business. So charging to recycling to creating battery material. So we have anode. He already mentioned about cathode now with the LFP, LMFP technology. So basically kind of creating an ecosystem to supply into the battery cell manufacturers.
So, how do you think Epsilon is working towards the global supply chain?
So, like I said, we are setting up this global business in the US and also in Finland to deal with our European customers. India, we think will be also exporting to Southeast Asia, but also to cater to the Indian market. So, these three facilities, which we said globally, are going to be supporting our global footprint.
Okay, and
And
what would you,
specifically on the cathode side, the Indian facility will be scaled up to 100,000 tons by 2030, and it will cater to the US, European, and Asian markets.
okay. So, what would you say is the market size of the battery materials?
So, anode is, almost, we think in 2030, 2035, it will be more like 20 million tons.
Okay.
And we think 85%, 80 to 85% still will come from China.
Okay.
So the addressable market will be more like 3 million tons. globally.
For cathode, it's roughly about double
Yeah,
of
it's double of that.
Sunit's figures. And again, the cathode market today is very lopsided because China accounts for 70% of the cathode. And on the LFP, LMFP side, where we come in, China accounts for 95 to 97% today. So that market is going to see an increase because of increased adoption in the US and EU of LFP, LMFP. And I think Epsilon, with our capacities, we will come in to bridge that gap, offering our customers a diversified supply chain, better access to a good quality premium product at cost-effective pricing.
I see. So, being the only company that's offering both cathode and anode, um, what does Epsilon bring to the table?
Like, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Like I said, I think the first one on the anode material, we have our parent company, so we bring the precursor ourselves. So we are not dependent on anyone. I think we are the first company in India, first of all, for anode manufacturing, but we are also amongst the first company who is vertically integrated to making a precursor also globally. There are not many companies which make their own precursor because precursor is bought either if it's a synthetic graphite, you are buying needle coke from refineries. If it is a natural graphite, obviously you are buying from mines. So we have a technology where we developed our own meso coke, which is our precursor, so which is vertically integrated.
I see.
So obviously that's a big strength which we bring in our material from our R&D technology, which we have developed over the last 6 years, has proven to perform much better than our competition material from a discharge capacity point of view and from a fast charge also.
Okay. So,
Also, for the customers, it's always better to have one-stop service. So
Yeah.
if you have anode and cathode both, especially on cell testing side, it's a big help, right? You go to a cell maker and they're using say anode from a different company, cathode from a different company. Here, our existing customer base can use anodes and cathode from the same company. That's
Right.
one. And the other thing is what Sunil talked about, the whole ecosystem. That is an advantage to the customers as well. Because at the end of the day, with our recycling, we can have a big, circularity in supply chain. We supply, go to the cell makers, they have tie-ups with the OEMs, and OEMs will have tie-ups with us to recycle the same material. So that's
One is their production scrap,
correct.
because there is always some waste in production at the
Right.
cell manufacturing or the OE manufacturing, and then their end customers, because there is OES, which is spare parts, their end customers. At some point of time, there is end of life of the battery. Either you find a second use for the battery or you will recycle the battery. So we become a one-stop shop from a battery material point of view. Of course, providing EV charging infrastructure, which will be our future, and then also at the same time doing the battery recycling for them. So that's a big benefit.
okay. So, what is Epsilon's strategy for upcoming partnerships and capacity building?
So we are going on our own right now from a capacity building point of view. Made some strategic steps already, like we said about Johnson Matthey acquisition of our cathode facility in Germany. We have tied up with few other companies for the next generation material development. But that's more on a material development point of view. We do not, as of now, we do not plan to make any joint venture partnership for scaling up our business. But that doesn't mean it cannot come. It can come in future. But today we do not have any plans.
Okay. So, are there any hindrances caused by restrictions applied on any of the countries abroad?
No, the countries where we want to be. I mean, actually, it's more an advantage to be in those countries because we take them away from a reliance on one country. Because today, like you said, I think 97% of LFP technology or LMFP technology is done in China. Similarly, graphite anode material is 95% produced in China or processed in China. So there is, for every country who's buying today, who's setting up gigafactories. India started putting the gigafactories now. First one will be online later this year. But you go in the US, there is several thousand gigawatt of capacity already installed. But the reliance is all on China because you have to buy from China. So it's not a hindrance, actually. They're more inviting us to be there and built it up for them. Same time, it's a highly capital intensive business. So obviously, you need support from the local government and also the federal government and or the central government at that case, even in India. So I think those discussions are very active with the government who are there, but I don't see any hindrance to go and set up a plant.
Yeah, in fact, like Sunil mentioned, it's an opportunity because even though the EU doesn't have any restrictions, but the US has put restrictions and duties on China made material.
Right.
That is an opportunity for us. Obviously, the US wants the world to come up with a supply chain alternative to the current Chinese LFP and LMFP.
There
So
are
I
barriers
see-
to entry for the material in US.
I think one area where the Indian manufacturers want the Indian government and the US government to have some kind of agreements is the critical minerals agreement, which could be very helpful for Indian manufacturers. Currently, the agreement has a big loophole, so Chinese manufacturers or other manufacturers can actually buy non-critical minerals from China, produced in non-Chinese countries, and still be able to export that material. So I think a joint partnership could be very helpful.
I see, sir. What would you say are the sustainable practices that are implemented by Epsilon?
Sure. I think
So, like the material goes into electric vehicle and we want to transition into clean energy. So we're very, very cautious of the fact that it has to be done responsibly and sustainably. So in our facility, to start with, to name few, I'll come to we've done our life cycle analysis also, but I'll talk about that. But so starting with our energy circularity. So what we do is we produce our own energy today with all the waste gases. So there is no escape, it's a zero discharge facility. We're using all our waste gases to produce energy, which we are using it back into the system. So basically, the circularity of everything which we do inside the plant is getting consumed within the plant. So there is nothing which is going out. We don't have any. We don't use any chemical treatment. We are using thermal treatment. So obviously, there is no discharge which is going out because it's all thermal treatment. Our life cycle analysis today for our Indian facility shows that we are almost 78% below our similar Chinese counterpart. In the US and in Finland actually is even lower. So we are more like 84% below our Chinese counterpart. In the US, because of the energy mix which we get, we are more like 65% below our Chinese counterpart. So we want to do it very, very sustainably.
Right.
Apart from that, that's on the environment side, but from a social and governance point of view, Epsilon has been very, very active, not just for advanced material, but also for carbon. So we want to operate in the communities where we are operating. So we want to work for the communities, not only those communities, but also going outside. So we've tried to touch lives of several thousand people with our initiatives which we do on the social governance side.
And going forward, those same sustainable practices will be utilized in any of the new capacities that are coming up.
Yeah.
Essentially, zero waste discharges, either in terms of gas emissions or water emissions, and looking for circularity.
So, I'm done with the questions, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank you.
such a thoughtful, thought-provoking and insightful session.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.